Hi, everybody, and welcome to What's Situya's March Madness Tournament Preview. We're going to take a look at each region and see how they stack up. Right now, we're going to talk about the Midwest. This is the region, Jack, that we've talked about as being the toughest region in the entire tournament. And I'm sure you agree with that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The way it's stacked up.
I mean, you look at the top 5 seeds in this bracket, and you say, well, they could have the best 1 seed, they could have the best 2 seed, they could have the best 3 seed. Down the line, this is a bracket that's stacked. They've got 3 of last year's best 4 teams that went to the Final Four, and Duke. So, I mean, this is a dangerous grouping of teams.
And it's certainly not been a bracket that's been without criticism. I know both of us want to talk about the biggest mistake that the selection committee has made with this region, and that's putting the Louisville Cardinals as a 4 seed. That's way too poor of a seed for them, right?
Well, I think that Louisville is a much better team than the number to the left on the bracket. They're not a 4 seed, but when we talk about egregious mistakes, while I agree Louisville should not be a 4, they should be a 2 or a 3. NC State just being in the tournament, I think, shouldn't. And I think the committee looked at that, and that's a case of, they had that great win right at the end of the season, so that's stuck in everyone's mind. Everyone's like, wow, NC State, maybe they're, because we just sort of forgot about the first couple months of the season. I was a really big fan of what Larry Brown did at SMU, who was the total opposite. They struggled in those final 2 weeks of the season that we know are fresh in everyone's minds. So I don't think the Wolfpack should even be in the tournament.
Well, but not only, SMU struggled, but they also had a terrible non-conference strength of schedule. If you're looking at how the selection committee is going to pick, teams that get in, that's got to be something that goes in there. And Louisville, I think it is a huge egregious mistake, but they're the number 4 seed. Think about it. In the AAC tournament, listen, the American Athletic Conference is not that good of a league. Okay, we get that. There are 5 great teams and 5 terrible ones, but they beat Rutgers, Houston, and the University of Connecticut by an average of 33.3 points in that tournament. They beat UConn 3 times this season, once at home, once on the road, and once on a neutral court, and none of them were close. Just because they're in this conference and they have this stigma around them, which I think is why they're seeded so low, does not mean they're a 4 seed. I think it's a terrible. I think that if you're going to put a life savings on Louisville or Wisconsin, who's a 2 seed in the West, who are you going to bet on? Louisville.
I agree, but using that same logic, the AAC, I think the AAC stigma carries the exact same for SMU. They're in the same conference, and I think they suffered the same stigma in Louisville. We saw the committee seems to be very anti-American athletic conference. Moving on, this bracket, it's tough to pick an upset because it's so top-heavy. There's so many good teams at the top. We sort of forget about the 11s and 12s in this bracket. But, I like NC State. I know I just said they shouldn't be in the tournament. But,
everything you need to know about March
Madness. What seems to happen in March is that they'll win a couple games just so everyone will be quiet. Just because I think they shouldn't be in the tournament doesn't mean I don't think that they can get hot. And, they can beat a St. Louis, who I think is a good team that got an unfavorable draw.
Yeah, it's tough to see just a great defensive team like St. Louis who deserves, a better draw than that, but that's bad luck. If you want to talk about upsets, I'm going to look for the second round, or the round of 32. Some people say it's the third round, which doesn't make any sense. But I'm going to look at the Tennessee Volunteers. I'm saying they win the play-in game over Iowa and then beat the Duke Blue Devils in the round of 64. And that's something that's not expected, but you look at this Duke team. They've got tremendous offensive weapons in Jabari Parker, Rodney Hood, and if they've got a role player going, they're almost unbeatable. But that doesn't usually happen, and their interior defense is awful. And Tennessee's got Jarnell Stokes, who they can throw the ball inside and make plays happen, and Duke's not going to be able to stop him. It's a terrible matchup. So I've got the Volunteers in the Sweet 16.
And that's really interesting because Tennessee's first-round matchup is against the team that I've been so on the fence, and that's the University of Massachusetts Minutemen, because the team that started off the season well, slipped in the middle. It's a team that I think has the talent to maybe make a run, but they've shown so many times that they're just susceptible to these poor games. So on one hand, I'm like, well, it's UMass. It's a great team that's sort of, they got lazy in the middle of the season. They threw away some bad games, but they're ready now. They're going to do it. Or I'm like, well, it's UMass, and they've got 8 losses, and they didn't particularly play a tough schedule, and, they could be one and done. So I think UMass versus, if you like Tennessee to win that playing game, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup, and then moving on to play presumably the Duke Blue Devils. That's going to be a close matchup. You always got the 8-9, the 7-10. Some people flip a coin to determine their bracket. I'm super against that because there's always some team that has to be better. Except in this region, there was one game that after just hours of looking at, and neither of these teams are going anywhere, and I just can't separate the two of them. Texas and Arizona State, I actually went to the coin flip method. I picked the Sun Devils based on that. But I think that matchup is about as toss-up as you can get.
Yeah, that's certainly a close game. I feel like I have the Longhorns there, but that's a coin flip matchup, and I think Duke Tennessee is kind of in that category as well. Just when you look at the way the teams stack up, just seeding wise, just looking at their records, just objectively speaking. I want to know right now, who's your pick to win this region?
And before I make my pick, I want to throw out something that there seems to be this idea that you're either a pro Wichita State or you hate Wichita State. There's no middle ground. You can't just say, you know what, I think Wichita State's a really good team, which I think they are. And I'm all for Wichita State. And I think this is a perfect example of Wichita State being a really good team who got absolutely pummeled by the draw because, as we said, they're going to take on, presumably, the best 4 seed, the Louisville Cardinals, in the tournament. That's not even up for debate. So, I mean, I really like Wichita State. If you looked at my bracket, you wouldn't know it because I don't have them getting out of Sweet 16 because I think Louisville is that good. I really feel for the Shockers. I think this could be, for 2 tournaments in a row, they go undefeated. They lose to Louisville last year. They go undefeated only to, maybe match up with Louisville again in a couple days. So I love the Shockers. I have Louisville beating them. I have Louisville beating whoever comes out of the bottom of that bracket, and I have Louisville in the Final Four in North Texas.
I agree with you. I was so looking forward when the Selection Sunday came to seeing what the draw was for Wichita State, to see if we could, take a look and be able to measure just how good they really are, despite that undefeated season where they hardly played any good teams. And you're absolutely right. Louisville, I think, is clearly the best team in this region. I think they go to the Final Four. And our Final Four picks, you can also check out in a little bit on one of our other videos. And that concludes the Midwest region portion of the What's It To You March Madness preview.